to introduce our speaker for today, Dr. Judy Zhu. Judy is a registered clinical counselor and a doctor of traditional Chinese medicine. She has been using body-mind integrated approach to helping people achieve better physical and mental health for more than a decade. She currently works here at Parkinson Society BC as a counselor, and she also has a private practice, Turning Point Body Mind Wellness. She has been practicing Zen meditation for over 10 years. She uses mindfulness extensively in both her clinical work and in her own life practice. Please join me in welcoming Judy today.
Okay, thank you, Amy, for the introduction and also for setting this up and to make this possible. Wonderful technology. And good morning. Welcome, everyone, for joining with me in this webinar on mindfulness and Parkinson's disease. I really appreciate this opportunity to share my knowledge and experience about mindfulness practice with all of you. It is impossible for me to talk about Parkinson's disease without thinking about my father, who passed away about 4 years ago around this time of the year, and after living with Parkinson's disease for over 25 years. I still remember those days toward the end of his life. He was lying in bed at hospital, and I was sitting beside him. He was in and out of consciousness, and most time I just held his hand and I caressed his forehead sometimes. And most time I was just sitting there with him and watching him sleeping or twitching or doing all sorts of things. And it was the mindfulness practice that time made it possible for me to experience a deep connection with him despite my fear, my sadness, and helpless feeling. And it is the mindfulness practice that made it possible for me to turn this challenging experience into a deep and rich experience for me. So as I'm talking about this now, I can still, as if feeling my fingertips, the sensations as if I were touching him, and as if he were here with us. I especially also feel appreciative of my clients, especially my clients at Parkinson Society BC here, that I work with and I'm still working with, who allow me to use mindfulness-based interventions in our sessions and who participated actively in a practice during the session with me and at home after our sessions. And I witnessed a lot of positive changes that mindfulness made in their lives. I practice mindfulness daily in my own life, and it's an important part of my life. And that's the reason that I like to share this practice with all of you. And I hope that it will make some difference in your life as it made in mine and also in many of my other clients. And I hope that mindfulness practice can help you to cope Parkinson's disease with more ease, more peace, and also not only that, but also allow you to live a more fulfilled life with more joy. So mindfulness is a vast topic, and we have only about an hour together, and so this is meant to be a very brief introduction. So let's take a look at our agenda today. So we will cover what is mindfulness and what mindfulness is not. And we'll talk about why mindfulness is important. Why do we want to practice that? And I will also cover some benefits of mindfulness practice, especially to people living with Parkinson's disease and their caretakers. And then I will share some of my clinical scenarios about how mindfulness made a positive impact in other clients. And because mindfulness, even though it's called mindfulness, it is not only about mind. It's about your whole being. So the practice is very important. So we also will get some time to do a couple of brief mindfulness exercises. Okay. And yes, please post your comments and the questions, and I will answer your questions toward the end of my presentation. Okay, so now let's take a look at what is mindfulness. So mindfulness has, okay, first of all, the word mindfulness comes from an ancient language, Pali. The language Pali is the language that Buddha's teaching was first written down. And so it is a very important part of Buddhist meditation practice. However, these days, because of its proven benefits, it has been adopted very widely in the field of medicine, in the field of psychotherapy, and even in workplace, in school, athlete training, and in parenting. So you don't need to be a Buddhist in order to practice mindfulness. So three main components of mindfulness. The first one is awareness. So it's about paying attention. So you're aware of what's going on. You notice and you acknowledge what's going on. And you wanted to be aware of your present experience, not about past, not about future, but about your present experience. It can be the sensory input, such as what you hear. For example, you hear my words in this moment, what you feel, what you see. You're looking at the screen, you see those slides, and what you taste. Probably you still have the taste of your coffee in your mouth. Probably you're having a cup of tea at the same time. And what you smell, and you probably smell those aroma. So those are your present experience you want to pay attention to. And also, there's some internal experiences, such as your thoughts and your feelings and memories that are showing up in this moment. So you also wanted to acknowledge those and notice them. So next component is the acceptance piece. So when we notice those experiences, we want to have an attitude of non-judgment and acceptance. So it's very simple. Mindfulness is being aware of your present moment experience with acceptance. Sounds very simple, yet it is not always easy to practice. So here is my recent mindless moment experience. One morning, I went on a walk. I usually follow my morning routine, my morning route, which involves some neighborhood streets and then going into a pocket of woods, and then coming out with uphill streets leading back home. So I started my walk. Well, I noticed the birds. I was happy and I was breathing, all good. And then I started thinking about a book I read. And next moment, I suddenly realized that I was on this uphill street leading back home. Well, but the time I checked my clock, well, the time worked out well. I did not skip anything, but I did not have any recollection of walking through the woods, which usually is my favorite part. So probably you have similar experience as I have. So this is what our mind is, and often our mind is full of thoughts and not so mindful, but full of thoughts and all kinds of thoughts. And our mind is like a wild horse and leading us here, leading us there, going all over the place. That's a very normal state of our mind. And it can bring challenges to us. And in this case, obviously I miss out my favorite part of the walk. And a lot of times we miss out our life because of that. And here's some other examples how our mind, a wonderful mind, sometimes causes us trouble. So say that probably you experience some Parkinson's symptoms if you're living with Parkinson's disease. Say that your tremor is quite obvious despite the medication. So imagine that you're going to go a party and where you're going to hold up a glass of drink. So then your hand starts to shake and you're not feeling good about this tremor. Yet it doesn't stop there. So probably there's some thoughts going through your mind like that. Oh, here the tremor goes again. Oh my gosh, I hate this. I wish it can stop. Let me see if I can do this to make it stop. Then you try to control it, and it doesn't stop. And you wonder, oh my gosh, I wonder what are other people thinking about this. Probably they're talking about this. Probably they think it's very weird. So you try harder trying to control it, and you feel more frustrated, and you feel very tired. You feel worse, and you feel very stressed, and you wish you could leave. So it's not just your tremor here that makes you suffer. All these things going through your mind brings lots of suffering. And if you are caretaker, as you see your loved ones going through difficulties like tying shoelaces, going to the bathrooms with declined memories, and you're busy helping them to deal with all these life challenges, and you feel exhausted at the end of the day. So you lie in bed. You probably have those thoughts going through your mind. What is going to happen next? I wish I could have better handle on this. And what if his symptoms or her symptoms change? What I'm going to do next? I'm just so tired about this whole thing and I don't have a life. And then you feel guilty about all this. And you wish that you could stay positive. Yet it is very hard. It is very hard to find peace among all these challenges and to think positive. So if you're experiencing all these challenges, you're not alone. And that is very normal. And your mind is actually doing well, doing its job well. Yes, you heard me correct. I'm saying your mind is doing its job well. You might think, it's odd. How can my mind do its job well while I'm suffering? Now, here's the thing. Now, scientists suggest, based on a lot of researches, that our brains are developed for survival, not for happiness and peace. And you guys are here because your ancestors did their job well. Their brains constantly anticipated worst case scenarios. That's how they could survive, and that's how they could pass down their genes. And therefore, we inherited this brain that always go to the worst scenario cases, right? So here are some tendencies, natural tendencies of our brains. The first one is our mind, our brain always expects the worst. So here I'm talking about the brains for everybody, not for people who are living with Parkinson's or just the caretakers of Parkinson's disease people. So our mind always expects the worst. And there's an interesting saying I heard recently that our mind is like Velcro for negative things and Teflon for positive things. So if you had experience of, if your loved ones said quite a few of, positive things, and then one negative things, and at the end of the day, usually you remember that negative thing. So, so that is your mind at work. It always remembers the negative stuff. So to make sure that the negative stuff does not happen in the future. And the second tendency is our mind tends to hold on to pleasure and push away discomfort. So your mind will generate thoughts such as, oh, I don't like this. Oh, this tremor, I hate this tremor. So your mind generates those thoughts is not for your pleasure or for your happiness, for your ease and peace, but your mind is constantly scanning the environment and to make sure that um, you can you can get pleasure and avoid pain and danger. So, and another important thing is once your mind finds a place like a pleasure or place comfortable, your mind wants to hold on to it. And your mind does not like change and it resists change. And the third tendency of our mind, our brain, is that it interprets the threat. If there is a threat, this threat can be the actual danger in the environment that's happening now, or most time it's not anything that's dangerous that's happening, but those thoughts, such as what others thinking about me, or they might think that something wrong with me, or the thoughts about, oh, what kind of bad things going to happen tomorrow. So your mind will respond to those thoughts and then activates your body's alarm system, which is what we call the fight, flight, and freeze responses. So say that when you're very, very stressed, please notice and that this is the time when your brain is activating the alarm system and it's doing its job. So if we just follow our brain's natural tendencies, we can, you know, do a good job in survival, yes, and you get a chance to pass down your genes. Probably a lot of you here has already successfully done that. Yet it can also get us into many troubles. So the negativity bias of our mind can get you stuck in all the negative thoughts and make you feel anxious all the time, make you feel depressed and down, and see life as a big problem. And just get into all the challenges one after another. Um, and the resistance to change can also bring more struggles, as we know that living with chronic illnesses, especially Parkinson's disease, there's a lot of changes. There's no certainty. Just as you figure out the exact right dosage of your medication and the right timing to take it and everything's under control, bam, and there's another one, another symptom change, another problem happens, right? So resisting those changes doesn't make change go away. It makes this whole process just more difficult and more challenging for you. And the third one is also very important. As our mind constantly interprets your thoughts and your feelings, the environment things as a danger, and our body's alarm system is getting activated all the time, that releases the stress hormone into your system. And elevated stress hormones can make a lot of your Parkinson's symptoms worse and can lead to more anxieties, more depression symptoms, and can affect your sleep at night, and can make you have increased chance of other stress-related chronic illnesses. So now, after we talked about our mind's natural tendencies, you wonder, so what can we do? Now here is why we wanted to practice mindfulness. I'm trying to find this cursor here. Okay, here we go. So that's why mindfulness practice is important. This practice is a systemic way that was developed over and practiced over 2,000 years to help us to find peace and happiness while our mind is doing its natural thing. So think about this like two-leg way of walking. So mindfulness is another leg, so that you can walk the path of this life with more peace and ease and more joy, more balance. Okay, so let us continue. So the mindfulness practice allows us to gain insight into how our mind creates more sufferings for us, as we just talked about how our mind gets stuck in a negativity bias and just leads us to all sorts of scary, dark places. And then once we are aware of what our mind is doing, then we can interrupt our mind's natural tendencies once they are activated, and then we have a choice where we're gonna direct our mind to go other places. And then we can also change our way that we relate to our mind. So once we see, oh, our mind just create all these thoughts, then we do not need to identify with all of these thoughts. We can see those thoughts as thoughts, and we can choose what kind of thoughts we wanted to follow. And ultimately, and when we are able to adopt this two-leg way of walking, not just let this wild horse of our mind's natural tendency to lead us to all those scary, dark places, we can actually pay more attention to the joyful moments in life, to what you experience in this moment, and help us to live life more fully. So, because mindfulness nowadays is so popular, there are some ideas about mindfulness. I would like to clarify they're not. They're what mindfulness is not. The first one, mindfulness is not about getting rid of thoughts and to have a blank mind. Um, so it's very, very normal to have thoughts, as you in this moment, probably as you listen to my talk, and your mind probably having many different thoughts. That's all okay. And even when you are practicing, during the moment you're practicing mindfulness meditation, you may still experience thoughts. So there's nothing wrong with thoughts. The important part is about what is your relationship with thoughts. Are you able to watch them, observe them, and acknowledge them as thoughts? Okay, so the next one, mindfulness is not about giving up and withdrawing from life. Yes, over thousands of years that a lot of nuns and monks practice mindfulness meditation. But you don't have to be nuns or monks in order to practice this. And actually, mindfulness is about engaging with life more. It's about in this moment, as you are sitting, from outside point of view, you're sitting there when you practice mindfulness, you're not doing anything. But there's a lot of things going on. You can sense a lot, you can notice a lot of your feelings, thoughts, memories. So it's about noticing all of these. You have to engage with your life in order to notice them. So there's another concept about acceptance. When we talk about acceptance, a lot of people may have an idea that acceptance is so passive. It's about like it has this connotation of a giving in and giving up. Yet the acceptance we're talking about here is not about that. The acceptance is about you courageously embrace whatever is happening in this moment. Be it something you don't like, be it some symptoms you don't enjoy. And it takes active choice and courage in order to engage and in order to accept what is happening. Okay, so the third one is mindfulness practice is not about seeking relaxation and pleasure. Even though for a lot of people who practice mindfulness, the common byproduct, and people often experience a sense of relaxation, well-being, and even pleasure, yet this is not the goal or something that we chase after during the mindfulness practice. The point is about being with whatever is. Okay, so next one. Mindfulness also is not about getting rid of pain, suffering, and unwanted feelings. Even though for a lot of people, that's the beginning point. It's something because you experience pain, suffering, you experience those feelings that you don't feel comfortable. So that motivates people to start this practice, and that's totally okay. It's just this practice again, as you start this practice, the intention, the goal is not about getting rid of all of those things you don't want. Because remember, this is a part of our mind's natural tendency is to get rid of, push away, run away from all these unwanted stuff. So if we want to chase after that, then we get right back stuck in the same natural tendency of the mind that creates a lot of problems and troubles. So we wanted to actually be with whatever is in the moment. And sometimes you may even feel a bit more pain. You feel those unwanted feelings. And that is the part of practice. All right. Now, the three main skills in mindfulness, the first one is concentration. So we wanted to practice focus on one thing. There's some techniques it's about helping you to learn how to focus your mind so that you can stabilize your mind and in order to direct it and to make choices. The second one is about awareness. It's about open monitoring. So it's like now probably you're mainly focused on my talk. You hear my words. But if you just take a brief moment and notice what you can feel, probably your hands touching your, I don't know, part of your body, or uh, you smell something in the kitchen. So when you're aware of all these things, you are practicing that open monitoring. So the next thing, very important, is the loving kindness. So the loving kindness is this acceptance attitude, non-judgmental attitude when we practice mindfulness. It allows us to go through those challenging moments and helps us, give us this nurturing when we experience difficulty. So just a word about the second one, the open monitoring allows us to see what's happening in our mind so that you can see really how our mind creates stories. And then you can kind of make a different choice. Okay, so we have talked so much about what mindfulness is and what mindfulness is not, and what are the main skills. So we're gonna do a very brief mindfulness exercise here. So for those of you who are driving, I hope not, but if in case you're driving, please just pay attention to your driving. You don't have to do this. And for those of you sitting down, lying down, if you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes. And if you don't feel comfortable, that's okay. You can just rest your gaze upon somewhere on the floor, on a desk. So I'm going to explain what we're going to do. You can adopt any posture. So in this practice, it's a breathing exercise. It's the very basic practice of mindfulness. And so we're going to just take 3 deep breaths together. And it does not have to be super deep. So 3 breaths. Let's say just do 3 breaths together. And the most important part, I would like you to notice the whole process of your breathing process. So that involves the inhaling. And as you keep taking in more breaths, your lung can no longer, at a certain point, your lung can no longer take in more breaths, and then the natural exhaling will start. And then, as you keep letting go air, and then at a certain point, you have to take another breath. So I'm just explaining this is something I would like you to pay attention to during the exercise. Okay, so now, ready, set, go. So let's take 3 breaths together and just notice. Okay, so you just did your mindfulness practice. Very short, yet it's a practice. If you have any comments, questions, please post here. And because of the time limit, I don't have time to take your comments or your question here. We will talk about toward the end of the presentation. So after our first, let's go on after our practice. We're going to talk about what the researchers say on the benefits of practicing mindfulness. So there are a lot of benefits, and the first one is about the mindfulness practice changes the brain function, and the long-term mindfulness practice actually changes the brain structure. So, for example, the mindfulness practice can help people to focus better, to pay attention better, and to be able to sustain attention. I think that is also important part for people experience Parkinson's disease here. And the practice can activate our brain circuits associated with feeling happy and peaceful and all that, and help us to engage in life with more enthusiasm. So another exciting research that's done about how mindfulness practice, long-term ones, can actually change brain structure, can actually prevent the loss of gray matter density, which is often associated with aging and illnesses, can actually increase, the practice can increase the density of the gray matter. So that's very exciting. So the second main benefit is about our emotions. So the mindfulness practice can help regulate emotions, help us to kind of stand back and look at our feelings and look at our thoughts, and not to be pulled into all those negativity bias and being led by this wild horse, our mind. And therefore we that can help us to reduce anxiety and stress. So because it can help us to manage stress, it can help to heal and prevent a lot of stress-related illnesses. Because during the mindfulness practice, we cultivate this acceptance and this loving kindness. So as we cultivate that in ourselves, that will also help us in our interpersonal relationship. So, for example, as a caretaker, if you practice that kind of acceptance and loving kindness toward your own struggle, you will be more able to provide that kind of acceptance and kindness with your partner. And so you can support your partner even more. and that can improve the quality of the relationship. Um, and another part is it can help the social connectedness and help people to have the sense of well-being and being connected and not feeling alone and isolated. And because of this acceptance practice, it can help us to deal with a lot of our life challenges, including aging and illness, and help us to pay more attention to a lot of small things that give us joy and pleasure, and to help us to engage with our life with more ease and fulfillment. So next, specifically, some researches on mindfulness and Parkinson's disease. As I mentioned before, um, the gray matter density, that is something that research showed that's associated with the lot of Parkinson's disease symptoms like motor symptoms and cognitive symptoms. So a study in 2013 by Picard showed that from mindfulness-based intervention group, they actually showed increased gray matter density in those neural networks after eight weeks of intervention. So that's very exciting. And another study done in Australia, 2016, showed that mindfulness intervention for Parkinson's disease was actually associated with reduced anxiety and depression and can help to improve people's cognitive and motor functioning. And there's a lot of other studies, and I'm just here to share a couple of them. Another one indicate that the mindfulness practice can really help people to cultivate a sense of self-determination and empower people living with Parkinson's disease to handle their life and the disease. Okay, so here I'm going to briefly just share with you a couple of cases that I witnessed in the clients with Parkinson's disease and also their caregivers who go through some mindfulness-based counseling interventions with me. So because of confidentiality issues, I'm changing all their names here. So I will say this lady A in her 70s, and her main concerns about her fear about falling. She is experiencing this, difficulty with balance, and she also experienced a lot of anxieties about walking because she said that her mind was constantly racing and she wanted to do it very fast. She wanted to walk very fast, but somehow her body was not following. So as a result, she actually, fell more often. So during our sessions, we did our 8 sessions together. During our sessions, we practiced mindfulness breathing. We practiced mindfulness walking. We practiced the loving and kindness meditation together. And she reported to me that she actually was more able to pay attention just to her feet, her walking as she's walking. So she still noticed that her mind tried to butt in and try to tell her things and go fast, go fast. Yet she was able to just pay attention to her walking. And as a result, she's able to walk better with more balance, and therefore she experienced this increased confidence about walking. And another benefit she experienced about the loving kindness practice, she said that she was less anxious because in the past, whenever her daughter came over to help her, she felt that she's such a burden and she had to speed up, and she just hated that she was so slow. But with this loving kindness practice, she's able to kind of talk to herself with more kindness, like, okay, it's okay, I'm experiencing these difficulties, and it's okay to do it slowly. And as a result, she felt much less anxiety. So that's one example. And the other one is about a lady also in her 70s and experiencing a lot of symptoms about tremor and the difficulty with walking. And her struggle was that she found it's really hard to accept her tremor, and she felt ashamed of her tremor, of her way of walking. She wanted to always hide from others. And as a result, she experienced a lot of isolation and disconnect from people. So in our practice together, she reported, and um, um, it's very interesting. She said that whenever, as we were practicing the breathing exercise, whenever she noticed her hand, whenever she tried to pay attention to her hand, or even thinking about tremor, she noticed that her tremor getting worse. And she also started noticing that in her life, whenever she gets stressed, her tremor gets worse. So, and then she said that, oh, I don't have to treat my tremor as an enemy. I can utilize my tremor as an assistant, and it is an indicator that I am stressed. So by using her tremor, by shifting that thinking, using her tremor and accepting her tremor as an assistant, she was able to find a more ease and more peace with her tremor and with other symptoms too. So here is a case about a caregiver. She is a sole caregiver for her father, who is in his 80s and who's experiencing really advanced Parkinson's disease. And she found it's really challenging to go over there and to visit her father. And she found herself feeling helpless, feeling frustrated, and actually even not able to really look at her father because she felt uncomfortable, felt this uh, just really uncomfortable feeling, even just to see those symptoms manifesting. As a result, she often avoided going there. Even when she was there, she would busy herself just helping with those tasks. And as a result, she said, she really wanted to connect with her father, yet she was not able to. And she felt guilty and she felt sad. So during our sessions together, we practiced the mindfulness. And during the practice, she was able to stay with her own feeling of helplessness, sadness, frustration. She was able to give more space to those feelings. And as a result, she's more able to be there with her father. She realized it's her own feeling that's blocking her from experiencing the connection with her father. Because of time issue, I'm just going to go through these very quickly. So these next two examples also can be very representative for a lot of Parkinson's people, because like for this client, his experience was this very low mood with his Parkinson's disease, and it's very hard for him to feel engaged with life. So with our practice, he starts to notice small things in life, like sunset, like a cup of tea in the morning, like smile on his partner's face, and the laughter and the naughtiness of his grandchildren. And he managed to kind of shift his attention to those small moments more. And he found he started to enjoy his life more. And some other clients, that's also very common. Instead of focusing and just only on Parkinson's disease and let Parkinson's disease kind of control their life, they start to really look at what's important for their life, what are some meanings in their life. And as a result, they're more able to live their life with ease and with more joy despite the Parkinson's disease. Okay, so again, I want to emphasize that we know the benefits and knowing does not cut it. So it's the practice that's important. So some type of mindfulness practice, there's some informal practice you can do anytime, just like we did, 3 breaths. And you can do it when you're brushing your teeth, when you're folding your laundries and all that. And some formal meditation practice, and those are practice that people devote like 20 minutes, even like an hour or something like that every day, to really kind of jumpstart their practice and to have a very solid, strong practice to guide their life. And some people may want to deepen further their mindfulness practice and especially explore the spirituality part of that. And then they can go into the intensive retreat practice, and sometimes involves a weekend, sometimes involve even longer, like a week or 2 weeks. Okay, so I would like to talk briefly about some daily informal practice, which I suggest you all start doing, because that's something easy we can all do. For example, when your phone rings, you can let it ring for 1 or 2 times and listen to the ringing, breathe, notice what's happening. And when you're sitting in the car in the traffic, you can take a breath when the car is not moving, of course. You can take a breath and look at the people sitting in the other cars, or look at the rains. I hope it stopped raining, but probably still raining. So when you walk your dog, that's a great opportunity because your dog will provide a lot of stimulation to you. You can watch the experience. And doing dishes, folding laundries, tying your shoelaces, it's all those little things that involves your hands. So you can feel what does that feel like, when I'm touching the dishes with soapy water, when I'm folding the laundry, and when I'm tying my shoelace, and sometimes you're struggling with your shoelaces. So what is it like? Showering, having a cup of teas, like this dude is brushing teeth. All those moments, wonderful moments for practicing mindfulness. All right, now I think, how are we doing with time? Good. So now we're gonna do another short mindfulness practice. So if you are holding any pens or anything, so if you can put them down, and if you feel comfortable, close your eyes. I would suggest you to close your eyes. And for the caretakers, I'm just having a sip of water. For the caretakers, if you are okay sitting straight up, I would encourage you to do that. And other than that, any posture is okay. So we're going to start. If you are sitting and your feet flat on the floor, just notice the contact between your feet and the floor. And if you lie in bed, if you're lying in your reclining chair, just notice the contact between your feet and the bed or chair or anything. And notice the contact between your buttocks and whatever you're in touch with, the chair, the bed. And then take a brief moment. Just notice what kind of sounds you can hear in your environment besides my words. Notice those sounds. And notice what your mind is doing. If you notice your mind going away, no problem. Just gently bring it back to your breathing, to the sensation of the contact. And now we're going to bring our attention to our breath. Just like we did before, we're going to pay attention to the process of our breathing. And just to notice the inhaling and the exhaling. Inhaling and exhaling. And notice the movements in the body as you breathe. And follow this rhythmic movements in your body. Now, as you're breathing, I would like you to imagine a puppy or a kitten who are just born, very tiny one. And notice how small it is. Notice its fluffy furs. Notice probably it's barely able to walk. And if it's open eyes already, just imagine those big eyes looking at you. And now imagine that you're picking that little kitten or puppy up in your hands. Allow yourself to feel that. This small body in your hands. How vulnerable, how lovely. And notice this tenderness in your heart, this warmth, loving sensation in your heart. And allow yourself to feel that just allow yourself to feel that, the tenderness, warmth, loving sensation. And still breathe. And as you're feeling this soft, warm feeling in your heart, I'm going to ask you to repeat with me, after me, 3 sentences. You can do that out loud, or you can do that in your mind. May I feel safe. And breathe. May I feel peace. And breathe. And may I feel more joy. Breathe. Now repeat that with me. May I feel safe. May I feel peace. And may I feel joy. And allow those words to linger in your mind. And as you breathe, you're going to take another 3 breaths together. And 2 more breaths. And 1 more breath. And when you're done, You can open your eyes slowly. Just give yourself a moment. Come back. Okay, so I think we're almost at the end. So this, we did our very brief mindfulness practice today. And if you would like to continue with this practice, and I'd like to just briefly go through with you some resources. There's some local mindfulness-based counseling services that I do at Parkinson Society BC, and also I do in my private practice, Turning Point Body Mind Wellness. And there is the Center for Mindfulness Canada located in North Vancouver. You have their website here. It's a very helpful resources, and they provide a lot of group-based mindfulness practice. You can check that out. I've listed a couple of books here. There's so many books, wonderful books about mindfulness and the practice and all that. And I just listed books that I read and I found relevant, and especially for people living with chronic illnesses. So feel free to check them out. There's some online audio and video resources here, and some mindfulness, the guiding the audio part you can use, and that will be very helpful to guide you and to do your practice. And the last one, not the least, how mindfulness empowers us. It's a very short animation, and I find it very cute and very, very useful. So if you have time, please check that out. Okay, so I think that's about it. So Amy, so probably do we have time? We can take a couple of questions or look at comments and all that.
We do. So it looks like we had a question here. Do the benefits of mindfulness cease if it is not practiced?
Do the benefits of mindfulness cease if it's okay? That's a very good question. So I will say yes or no. So yes is if you say that you practice mindfulness for 1 minute, you just started practice that, you experience probably the benefits. So you start feeling a bit calm and all that in this moment. If you only did 1 minute, let's say, and then the benefits is pretty little, and it will wear out throughout the time if you no longer practice that. But for people, actually, if they practice mindfulness for a long time, and if you stop for, let's say, a week or something, and those benefits, let's say that I talked about that before, after long-term practice of meditation, there's actually change of the brain structure. There's actually change of the wiring of your brain, so the change of function of brain. So those ones won't kind of stop totally just because you stop practice for a day, for a week or so. Having said that, mindfulness practice, the benefits you receive is directly related with your practice. So you practice little, you receive little benefits. You practice more, you receive more. I hope that answers your question. Okay, so there's a question about, I noticed my heart beating faster than normal. As I said, that when you practice mindfulness, you start to notice more about what's going on. So that could be several different things. It could be that you notice more about what's happening in your heart. Also, it could be that you're doing something new. You kind of feel a little bit of like, oh, what's going on here? Because you start focusing more on something new. So that also may make your heart beat a bit faster. So whatever you experience, simply just acknowledge that. That's part of practice. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions here? Somebody's saying that, okay, great, start baking now. Okay, happy baking and practice your mindfulness while you bake. It's a wonderful opportunity because you're gonna, touch things, and you're gonna smell things, and you're gonna do things. Yes, okay.
So we are out of time here, but if anyone has any other questions or comments, please feel free to type them in the chat box. Just want to thank Judy again for taking the time to put this presentation on mindfulness together and taking the time to speak with us today. As I mentioned at the beginning, Judy is one of our clinical counselors that we have here at the Society. For those who weren't aware, we do have a free short-term counseling program made available to anyone touched by Parkinson's in BC. So that means both people with Parkinson's as well as caregivers, care partners, anyone touched by Parkinson's. Sessions are 60 minutes long and they can be done either in person at our office or over the phone. If you have any questions or you're interested in our counseling program, please feel free to give us a call at 1-800-668-3330. Again, that's 1-800-668-3330. Or feel free to send me an email, and I will also include this information in my follow-up email to everyone. So thank you again for taking the time to join us this morning. We hope you found it informative, and we hope you have a good day.
Yes, I'd just like to thank everybody for joining with me for this webinar, and happy practice. Any questions, that you know where to find me and find us. Okay, have a good day.